Humans will devour your children and doom your race to extinction, Quasar bellowed, his voice echoing through the minds of the Voxari younglings huddled around the holographic fire. The little ones shivered, their feathered head crests trembling. They begged to hear more about the terrifying bipedal monsters from the far reaches of the galaxy. Quasar's eyes glinted in the flickering light as he continued the grim tale. Legend spoke of humans evolving on a planet with punishing gravity, vicious predators, and chaotic weather that would annihilate lesser species. Yet the humans endured, more than endured. They conquered their world and set their sights on the stars. A human can lift 10 times what a Voxari can, Quasar said. Their bones are like rock, their muscles like steel cables. They heal from wounds that would kill us, stitching their own flesh, growing back lost limbs. The younglings gasped. Humans never stop moving, never stop fighting, never stop expanding. They hunger to explore and need to dominate. Quasar pointed a clawed finger upward toward the stars. Their ships have been seen at the edges of our space. It's only a matter of time before they come for Vox Prime. And when humans arrive, he narrowed his eyes. Death and destruction always follow. The younglings whimpered and huddled closer together. Some refused to believe, dismissing humans as a myth. But others took the warning to heart, dreading the day the human menace would darken their skies. Far across the void, on the bridge of an exploration vessel, Captain Jacob Wilson gazed at a holographic star map. A pulsing red dot marked an uncharted world, one teeming with rich resources and alien life. The Voxari system. Decades of economic stagnation and resource scarcity had turned the people of Earth desperate. This mission was humanity's last hope. They had to secure this planet, had to stake their claim, or the human race would fade into oblivion, a failed evolutionary footnote. There was no choice. The Voxari would submit, or they would burn. Jacob's jaw clenched as he gave the order. Set course for the alien system, full speed ahead. The crew erupted into hurried action, suddenly all too aware of the stakes, the fate of their species riding on this operation. As the ship surged toward Vox Prime, a single thought crystallized in the captain's mind, pulsing with cold certainty. The age of humanity was about to begin. An urgent ping interrupted Jacob's thoughts. He snapped his attention to the holographic display, where a flashing red light indicated an incoming distress signal. "Sir!" Lieutenant Meera Patel called out from her station. "We're picking up a distress signal from the surface of Vox Prime. It's coming from a Voxari research outpost." Jacob furrowed his brow. "What's the situation?" Patel's fingers flew across her console as she analyzed the data. "The outpost is under attack by an unknown hostile force. They're requesting immediate assistance." A surge of adrenaline coursed through Jacob's veins. This was the moment he had trained for, the chance to prove humanity's worth on the galactic stage. He stood tall, his voice ringing with authority. "Assemble a landing party, full combat gear, we're going in." The ship's armory was a hive of activity as the team geared up. They donned sleek black combat suits, reinforced with advanced polymers that could withstand the brutal conditions of alien worlds. Pulse rifles, plasma grenades, and portable energy shields were distributed with practiced efficiency. As the dropship hurtled towards the planet's surface, Jacob briefed his team. "We don't know what we're up against, but we're going to hit them hard and fast. Protect the Voxari at all costs. Failure is not an option." The outpost came into view, a smoldering ruin amidst the alien landscape. Zorgon troops swarmed the facility, their hulking forms encased in spiked obsidian armor. Voxari defenders lay scattered, overwhelmed by the sheer brutality of the attack. Jacob signaled his team to fan out, taking up strategic positions. With a nod, they opened fire. The human weapons tore through the Zorgon ranks, plasma bolts searing through their armor without effort. The aliens roared in confusion and pain, caught off guard by the ferocity of the human onslaught. Jacob led the charge, his movements a blur as he weaved through the chaos, dispatching foes with ruthless precision. Quasar and his Voxari warriors arrived on the scene, drawn by the sounds of battle. They watched in awe as the humans fought, their speed and strength defying belief. Jacob spun, his rifle spitting death, while his free hand lashed out, crushing a Zorgon's skull with a sickening crunch. Seeing Quasar and the others, Jacob waved them forward, inviting them to join the fray. Quasar hesitated, his instincts screaming to flee in the face of these legendary predators. But as he witnessed the humans' selfless bravery, their unwavering commitment to defending the Voxari, something stirred within him. He raised his weapon and charged, his warriors following close behind. Together, humans and Voxari fought as one, driving the Zorgons back. Jacob and Quasar found themselves back-to-back, their movements synchronized as they cut down the enemy. The humans' raw power complemented the Voxari's agility, creating a formidable fighting force. The battle was fierce but short-lived. Faced with the combined might of the humans and Voxari, the Zorgons broke ranks and fled, their plans for conquest shattered. In the aftermath, Jacob approached Quasar, his helmet retracting to reveal a sweat-streaked face. "You fought well," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Captain Jacob Wilson of the Earth ship Prometheus." Quasar clasped the offered hand, marveling at the strength in the human's grip. "I am Quasar, leader of the Voxari warriors. I must admit, I never believed the stories about your kind, but now I see they barely scratch the surface." Jacob smiled. "We're here to help, Quasar, to learn about your people and protect them from threats like the Zorgons. I know our reputation precedes us, but I hope that today's events have shown you our true nature." As the Voxari tended to their wounded and assessed the damage, Jacob knew their mission had changed. The Voxari needed allies, and humanity needed a purpose. He turned to Quasar, a glint of perseverance in his eyes. "We have to go now, but we'll be back. With knowledge, resources, technology, everything we can offer to help you rebuild and defend yourselves. This is just the beginning of what we can accomplish together." Quasar nodded, a newfound respect and hope burning in his chest. As the human ship ascended into the sky, he gathered his warriors close. "The age of humanity has begun," he said solemnly. "And with it, a new era for the Voxari. Nothing will ever be the same." Word of the humans' intervention spread like wildfire across Vox Prime. Hollow broadcasts flickered in every home, showing footage of the battle against the Zorgons. Voxari of all ages crowded around screens, talons clicking nervously as they watched the bipedal aliens fight with impossible strength and speed. The Voxari High Council convened an emergency session, summoning Quasar and Jacob to the gleaming spires of the capital city. As they entered the grand chamber, Jacob felt the weight of 100 alien eyes upon him. The council members perched on elevated platforms, their feathered crests twitching with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "We are grateful for your assistance against the Zorgons," the lead counselor began, voice warbling slightly. "But we must express our concerns about an alliance with such a formidable species as yourselves." Jacob stepped forward, hands spread in a gesture of peace. "We understand your hesitation. Humanity comes in peace, seeking friendship and mutual benefit." Before the council could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A Voxari scout rushed in, feathers ruffled and eyes wide with panic. "Counselors, a massive Zorgon fleet has entered the system. They seek revenge for their defeat." The chamber erupted in squawks of alarm. The lead counselor raised a wing for silence, then turned to Jacob with resignation. "It seems we have little choice. We accept your offer of assistance and technology sharing." Jacob nodded grimly and activated his wrist communicator. "Prometheus, this is Captain Wilson. Request immediate reinforcements from the human colony. All available ships. We've got a fight on our hands." As they awaited the human fleet's arrival, Jacob and his team worked tirelessly alongside Quasar and the Voxari warriors. They fortified key defensive positions, calibrating shield generators and setting up artillery emplacements. Jacob pored over star charts with Voxari strategists, plotting tactics to counter the Zorgon assault. The sky above Vox Prime lit up as the human reinforcements dropped out of FTL, just as the Zorgon armada began its attack. Sleek human battleships engaged the enemy vessels, energy weapons flashing in the void. From the planet's surface, Jacob watched the space battle unfold, marveling at the seamless coordination between human and Voxari pilots. On the ground, chaos reigned as Zorgon dropships pierced the atmosphere. Jacob and Quasar led the defense, rallying their troops at the front lines. Voxari warriors, now clad in human-made combat armor and wielding pulse rifles, fought with newfound confidence beside their human allies. "Hold the line!" Jacob shouted, his voice carrying over the din of battle. He fired his rifle in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark in Zorgon flesh. Beside him, Quasar moved with fluid grace, his natural agility enhanced by human tech. The fighting intensified, and Jacob felt a searing pain as a Zorgon energy blast grazed his side. He stumbled but kept firing, pushing through the agony. Quasar glanced at him with concern, but Jacob merely nodded and pressed on. The Voxari warriors, seeing the humans' resilience, fought with renewed vigor. In the heart of the battle, Jacob spotted the Zorgon commander, a hulking brute twice his size. He locked eyes with Quasar, a silent understanding passing between them. Together they charged. The fight was brutal and swift. Jacob's enhanced strength matched the Zorgon's raw power, while Quasar's speed kept their foe off balance. Working in perfect sync, they pressed their advantage. Jacob landed a crushing blow to the commander's knee, and Quasar followed with a precision strike to a vulnerable joint in the alien's armor. Defeated and humiliated, the Zorgon commander bellowed a retreat. The invading forces fell back, their fleet disengaging from orbit. The human-Voxari alliance had held firm, and the Zorgons knew they couldn't sustain a prolonged conflict against such a formidable enemy. In the battle's aftermath, the Voxari High Council convened once more. This time there was no hesitation as they formally recognized the alliance with humanity. Jacob and his team stood tall as the council bestowed upon them the highest honors of Vox Prime. As the ceremony concluded, Quasar approached Jacob, his eyes shining with a new understanding. "I once told stories of humans as terrifying conquerors," he admitted. "I see now that I was wrong, and right. Your strength is indeed fearsome, but it is your heart, your compassion and loyalty, that truly sets you apart." Jacob smiled, clasping Quasar's shoulder. "This is just the beginning, my friend. Together, there's no limit to what we can achieve." With the alliance solidified, Jacob gathered his team. They had a ship to prep, new star charts to study, and a galaxy of possibilities ahead. As humans and Voxari worked side by side, sharing knowledge and technology, Jacob couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for their next mission. The journey to Earth filled Quasar with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, he pressed his face against the viewport, marveling at the sprawling cities and vast oceans below. Jacob stood beside him, a reassuring presence. "Welcome to my home," Jacob said, his voice tinged with pride. The landing pad bustled with activity as they disembarked. A crowd had gathered, held back by security barriers. Quasar's feathers ruffled at the cacophony of voices and flashing cameras. He'd never seen so many humans in one place before. "Stay close," Jacob murmured. "The council's waiting." They made their way through the throng, escorted by stern-faced guards. Quasar couldn't help but notice the wide-eyed stares and hushed whispers that followed in their wake. He straightened his posture, acutely aware of his alien appearance among the sea of humans. The council chambers were a far cry from the utilitarian meeting rooms on Vox Prime. Ornate tapestries adorned the walls, and holographic displays flickered with data streams. The counselors sat in a semicircle, their expressions guarded as Jacob and Quasar took their places before them. "Captain Wilson," the lead counselor began, her voice crisp, "we've reviewed your report on the Vox Prime incident. While we appreciate the strategic value of an alliance, we have concerns." Jacob nodded, his face hardened. "I understand, counselor. That's why we're here, to address those concerns head-on." What followed was a grueling series of debates and presentations. Jacob's voice grew hoarse as he argued passionately for the alliance, citing the Zorgon threat and the potential for mutual growth. Quasar found himself under intense scrutiny, bombarded with questions about Voxari culture, technology, and intentions. Days stretched into weeks, then months. Quasar threw himself into the intensive education program Jacob had arranged, his pupils dilating with the flood of new information. He pored over historical texts, marveling at humanity's tumultuous past and their incredible resilience. In science labs, he worked alongside human researchers, his quick mind and natural curiosity earning their respect. One evening, exhausted from another marathon study session, Quasar found Jacob in the facility's observation deck. The captain stood silhouetted against the Earth's curved horizon, lost in thought. "Your world is beautiful," Quasar said softly, joining him at the window. Jacob turned, a tired smile on his face. "It is, and it's worth fighting for, just like your world, Quasar." Quasar nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I used to fear humans," he admitted. "The stories we told, but now I see how wrong we were. Your people are capable of such kindness, such wonder." Jacob clasped Quasar's shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar between them. "We're not so different, you and I. That's what I've been trying to make the council see." Their efforts finally paid off. After months of deliberation, the council announced their decision to formally recognize the Human Voxari Alliance. The treaty signing was a momentous occasion, broadcast across both worlds. Quasar's talons shook slightly as he affixed his signature to the document, acutely aware of the history being made. With the alliance secured, they returned to Vox Prime, bringing with them a contingent of Earth's brightest minds. The joint facility they established buzzed with activity as human and Voxari experts worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of science and technology. Jacob and Quasar found themselves at the heart of this cultural exchange, working tirelessly to bridge the gaps between their peoples. They organized workshops, cultural exhibitions, and joint training exercises, fostering understanding and camaraderie. Just as things seemed to be settling into a rhythm, alarms blared throughout the facility. Jacob and Quasar raced to the command center, where chaos reigned. Holographic displays showed a Zorgon battle fleet dropping out of FTL, their weapons already charging. "How did they find us?" Quasar exclaimed, his feathers overflowing. Jacob's face hardened as he assessed the situation. "It doesn't matter. What matters is how we respond." He turned to Quasar, his eyes blazing with tenacity. "This is it, my friend. The real test of our alliance. Are you ready?" Quasar straightened, feeling the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. "Ready, Captain. Let's show these Zorgons what humans and Voxari can do together." As they rushed to rally their forces, Jacob couldn't help but smile grimly. This wasn't how he'd planned to showcase the strengths of their alliance, but sometimes the best bonds were forged in fire. The battle ahead would be tough, but he had faith in the unique combination of human tenacity and Voxari ingenuity. The facility shuddered as the first Zorgon salvos struck their shields. Jacob and Quasar exchanged a look of fierce dedication. It was time to put their hard-won alliance to the ultimate test. The facility shuddered as another volley of Zorgon fire slammed into the shields. Alarms blared, drowning out the panicked shouts of personnel rushing to battle stations. Jacob sprinted down a corridor, the acrid smell of smoke filling his nostrils. "Status report," he barked into his comm unit. "Shields at 30% and falling, sir," a frantic voice responded. "They've breached sectors 3 and 7. Jacob cursed under his breath. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with Quasar, whose feathers were ruffled and singed. "Jacob, we must split up," Quasar squawked urgently. "I'll take the east wing with my warriors. You secure the command center." Jacob nodded grimly. "Stay alive, my friend. We'll regroup soon." They clasped arms briefly before darting off in opposite directions. Jacob's boots pounded the metal floor as he rallied a group of human soldiers and scientists. "With me, we need to lock down critical systems." The team fought their way to the command center, pulse rifles spitting blue energy bolts at the advancing Zorgons. Jacob's enhanced strength allowed him to physically throw a Zorgon soldier into a wall, the alien's exoskeleton cracking from the impact. Meanwhile, Quasar led his Voxari warriors through maintenance shafts and air ducts, striking at the Zorgons from unexpected angles. Their natural agility allowed them to outmaneuver the bulky invaders in the tight spaces. "Now!" Quasar chirped, and his team dropped from ceiling panels, talons raking across Zorgon armor. In the command center, Jacob's team worked feverishly to fortify their position. A young scientist's eyes widened as she pored over incoming data. "Captain Wilson, the Zorgons, they're using our own weapons against us." Jacob's blood ran cold as he examined the readouts. How the hell did they get their claws on classified Earth tech? Before he could ponder further, his comm crackled to life. Quasar's voice came through, breathless but determined. "Jacob, we've bought some time, but we need a plan." Jacob's mind raced, analyzing the facility's layout. "I've got an idea. Can you lure their main force to Sector 9? It's a choke point." "Consider it done," Quasar replied. The trap was set. Jacob's team rigged explosive charges while Quasar's warriors harassed the Zorgons, drawing them deeper into the facility. When the bulk of the invading force entered Sector 9, Jacob gave the signal. "Now!" The charges detonated, collapsing part of the ceiling. Human soldiers unleashed a barrage of weapons fire while Voxari warriors struck from hidden alcoves. Caught in the crossfire, the Zorgons fell in droves. Amidst the chaos, Jacob spotted the Zorgon commander fleeing with a case of stolen tech. He locked eyes with Quasar across the room, and they both sprang into action. The chase led them through twisting corridors and down emergency stairwells. Jacob's enhanced speed allowed him to keep pace, while Quasar used his knowledge of the facility to cut off escape routes. They cornered the Zorgon in a storage bay. The alien towered over them, mandibles clicking menacingly. It lashed out with a clawed hand, catching Jacob in the ribs. He stumbled back, gasping. Quasar seized the opening, darting in low and striking at the Zorgon's legs. As the commander staggered, Jacob recovered and launched himself forward, tackling the alien to the ground. The fight was brutal and quick. Jacob's fists pummeled the Zorgon's armored hide, while Quasar's talons found weak points in the exoskeleton. Together, they subdued the commander just as reinforcements arrived to secure the area. Hours later, Jacob and Quasar stood in the wreckage of the command center, surveying the damage. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving them exhausted but alive. "We were lucky," Jacob said softly, wincing as he prodded his bruised ribs. Quasar nodded, his crest feathers drooping. "They exploited our weaknesses. We cannot allow this to happen again." Jacob's eyes hardened with grit. "You're right. It's time we took this alliance to the next level." Over the next few days, as cleanup efforts began, Jacob and Quasar worked tirelessly. They drafted new security protocols, coordinated joint training exercises, and laid the groundwork for an integrated defense network spanning human and Voxari space. As they pored over star charts and tactical readouts, Jacob couldn't shake a nagging worry. The Zorgons had struck too precisely, with too much inside knowledge. He exchanged a glance with Quasar, seeing the same concern mirrored in his alien friend's eyes. "We need to dig deeper," Jacob said quietly. "Find out how they got our tech, how they knew to strike here." Quasar clicked his beak in agreement. "Yes, and we must be prepared for what we might uncover." Jacob nodded grimly. The battle was over, but he sensed an even greater challenge looming on the horizon. Whatever came next, he was glad to have Quasar and the strength of their alliance at his side. Jacob banged his head on the conference table, the impact echoing through the room. "We can't afford to be divided. Not now. Not with what we're facing." Quasar's feathers rustled as he paced, his talons clicking against the polished floor. "Agreed. The Zorgon attack exposed our vulnerabilities. We need a unified response." They exchanged a look, years of shared battles and mutual respect passing between them in an instant. Jacob nodded, his expression resolute. "A joint task force. Elite soldiers from both our species working as one." The proposal sparked immediate uproar. Human generals bristled at the thought of sharing classified technology. Voxari elders screeched their disapproval, wary of further entanglement with an alien race. For weeks, Jacob and Quasar fought an uphill battle. They presented tactical analyses, combat simulations, and impassioned pleas to governing bodies on both worlds. In a packed council chamber on Earth, Jacob stood before a sea of skeptical faces. I've fought alongside the Voxari. I've seen their courage, their ingenuity. Together, we're stronger than we could ever be apart. On Vox Prime, Quasar faced down his own detractors. Humans may look different, but their hearts beat with the same fierce dedication to protect their homes, their families. We cannot let fear blind us to the strength of this alliance. Their persistence paid off. The councils voted and the task force was approved. Jacob and Quasar wasted no time. They pored over personnel files, combat records, and aptitude tests. Each candidate was scrutinized, debated, and tested. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Jacob said, pulling up a holographic display. Top of her class in zero-G combat. Multiple commendations for valor under fire. Quasar clicked his beak in approval. Pair her with Krivak. His sensor array implants will complement her tactical skills. Day by day, they built their team. Humans with enhanced strength and cutting-edge weaponry. Voxari with natural agility and advanced biotech. Each chosen for their skills, but also for their ability to adapt, to work with those different from themselves. The training pushed everyone to their limits. Human Marines gasped for breath as they ran obstacle courses designed for Voxari agility. Voxari warriors strained under the weight of human battlefield exoskeletons. In a cavernous training hall, Jacob watched a human sniper and a Voxari scout work in tandem. The human called out targets, while the Voxari darted through holographic terrain, placing guidance beacons with pinpoint accuracy. They're getting better, Quasar observed, his crest feathers rising with pride. Jacob nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. They're becoming a real team. As the task force neared combat readiness, alarms blared through the command center. Jacob and Quasar raced to the main display, where a grim-faced intelligence officer awaited them. Sir, we've intercepted communications. The rogue Zorgans. They've allied with the Rockin' Horde. Jacob's blood ran cold. The Rockin' Horde, ruthless mercenaries known for their brutality and disregard for galactic law. He looked at Quasar, saw the same realization in his friend's eyes. How bad? Jacob asked, his voice low. The officer pulled up star charts, showing a massive fleet gathering. They're preparing for a major offensive, multiple targets across human and Voxari space. Quasar's feathers bristled. We must strike first, hit them before they're fully mobilized. Jacob nodded, his mind racing through tactical options. Agreed, but where? They pored over intelligence reports, piecing together fragments of intercepted data. Finally, a pattern emerged. There, Jacob said, pointing to a nondescript asteroid cluster in the Gamma Quadrant. That's their staging area. Has to be. Quasar leaned in, his eyes narrowing. Heavily fortified. It won't be easy. No, Jacob agreed, but it's our best shot. Within hours, the task force was mobilized. As their ships prepared for the perilous journey into hostile space, Jacob addressed the assembled soldiers, human and Voxari standing side by side. What we're about to face will test us in ways we've never been tested before. But look around you. Look at who's standing next to you. Different species, different worlds, but united in purpose. Remember that when the fighting starts. We're stronger together. A chorus of cheers, human voices and Voxari trills, filled the hangar bay. The journey was tense, filled with sensor sweeps and evasive maneuvers. As they approached the asteroid base, Jacob and Quasar finalized their assault plan. We'll breach here and here, Jacob said, highlighting sections of the holographic display. Strike teams will push through these corridors, while our heavy weapons provide suppressing fire. Quasar nodded, adding his own markers. My warriors will use the ventilation shafts to flank their defensive positions. We'll funnel them into killing zones here and here. The attack unfolded with clockwork precision, Breaching charges blew holes in the asteroid's outer shell, and the task force poured in. Human Marines in powered armor provided a wall of covering fire, while Voxari strike teams used their natural agility to outflank the defenders. Jacob charged down a corridor, his enhanced muscles propelling him forward as he fired burst after burst from his pulse rifle. Beside him, Quasar moved with fluid grace, his bioengineered claws slicing through enemy armor. They fought their way deeper into the complex, the sounds of battle echoing through metal hallways. Human and Voxari soldiers worked in perfect synergy, covering each other's weaknesses, amplifying each other's strengths. In a vast chamber filled with humming power cores, they confronted the leader of the Rockin horde. Skrath the Defiler towered over them, his cybernetic limbs dripping with weapons. "Your pathetic alliance ends here," Skrath snarled, leveling a massive cannon at them. Jacob and Quasar didn't hesitate. They charged as one, dodging energy blasts and whirring blades. Jacob's enhanced strength allowed him to grapple with the towering warlord, while Quasar's lightning-fast strikes found weak points in Skrath's armor. The battle was brutal, but brief. With a final, coordinated assault, they brought the warlord down. As Skrath fell, the remaining Rockin forces broke and scattered. In the aftermath, as medical teams tended to the wounded and engineers secured captured data cores, Jacob and Quasar stood amid the wreckage. They were battered, bleeding, but alive, and victorious. "We did it," Jacob said, his voice hoarse from the acrid smoke that filled the air. Quasar nodded, his crest feathers drooping with exhaustion. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. The Zorgans are still out there and they'll be looking for revenge." Jacob's eyes hardened as he surveyed the captured base. "Then we'll be ready for them, together." As they began the long process of securing their hard-won prize, both knew that greater challenges lay ahead. The Zorgan-Rockin threat was far from finished, but they had proven that their alliance could withstand the crucible of battle. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. The victory over the Rockin horde left little time for celebration. Jacob and Quasar pored over intelligence reports in the dimly lit war room, their faces illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. "They're not wasting any time," Jacob said, his finger tracing the movement of Zorgan forces across the star map. "Look at this buildup in the outer rim." Quasar's feathers bristled as he studied the data. Stolen tech, mercenary reinforcements. They're preparing for something big. The next weeks blurred into a flurry of meetings, presentations, and heated debates. Jacob stood before the Earth Security Council, his voice steady but urgent. "We can't afford to wait. Every day we delay, the Zorgons grow stronger." On Vox Prime, Quasar faced the Elders' Assembly, his crest feathers flared in passionate argument. "Our victory over the Rockin proves the strength of our alliance. Now we must act before it's too late." Finally, after grueling negotiations, they secured approval for their preemptive strike. The hangar bay of the Joint Command Carrier buzzed with activity as Jacob and Quasar addressed their assembled forces. "This won't be easy," Jacob said, his eyes meeting those of human and Voxari soldiers alike. "But together we'll hit them hard and fast, cut off their supplies, cripple their production, and force them into a fight they can't win." The operation began with precision strikes on Zorgon outposts. Jacob watched from the bridge of a stealth frigate as Voxari infiltrators slipped past sensor arrays, planting charges on vital infrastructure. Explosions bloomed silently in the vacuum of space, leaving the Zorgon facilities in ruins. Simultaneously, Voxari assault ships swarmed Zorgon mining operations. Jacob coordinated with Captain Chen of the human heavy cruiser Titan, their combined firepower obliterating processing centers and transport vessels. "Status report," Jacob barked into his comm. "Targets Alpha through Delta neutralized," Chen replied. "Zorgon reinforcements inbound, but we've got them outgunned." The second phase of their offensive targeted the Zorgon shipyards. Jacob and Quasar led the strike team personally, their shuttle weaving through the chaos of space combat. The void lit up with weapons fire as human and Voxari warships hammered the shipyard's outer defenses. They breached the main fabrication facility, alarms blaring as they fought their way through twisting corridors. Jacob's enhanced muscles strained as he pried open a sealed blast door, allowing Quasar and their team to pour through. "Plant the charges," Jacob ordered, his pulse rifle spitting fire at the oncoming Zorgon security forces. "We've got 5 minutes to get clear." They barely made it back to their shuttle, the explosion rocking their small craft as they sped away from the collapsing shipyard. Jacob allowed himself a grim smile as he watched the Zorgon's prized capital ships crumble into space debris. Their success was short-lived. New intelligence flowed in, revealing a massive concentration of Zorgon and mercenary forces in a remote star system. "It's a trap," Quasar said, studying the tactical readouts. Jacob nodded. "Agreed, but it's also an opportunity we can't pass up." They formulated their plan, briefing their commanders on the intricate dance of feints and counterattacks that would spring their own ambush on the waiting Zorgon fleet. The battle erupted with staggering violence. Jacob barked orders from the command deck as human cruisers unleashed salvos of energy weapons. Voxari strike fighters darted between larger ships, their impossible maneuvers confounding Zorgon targeting systems. "Now," Jacob shouted, "all ships, execute pattern Omega." The human Voxari fleet split apart in a pre-planned sequence, engulfing the Zorgon forces in a deadly crossfire. Enemy ships exploded under the onslaught, but Jacob knew the real fight was yet to come. He met Quasar at the boarding tubes, checking the seals on his combat suit. "Ready?" Quasar's alien features twisted into what Jacob recognized as a fierce grin. "Always." They launched towards the Zorgon flagship, their boarding craft protected by swarms of fighter escorts. The impact of their breach shook the entire vessel. Jacob and Quasar led the charge, fighting through waves of Zorgon defenders. Jacob's enhanced strength sent alien warriors flying, while Quasar's talons found weak points in their armor with surgical precision. They fought their way to the command deck, Jacob's muscles burning with exertion as he grappled with a towering Zorgon officer. Quasar's agility saved him from a vicious energy blade, allowing him to strike back with a flurry of devastating blows. The Zorgon High Command fell before their combined assault. Jacob stood over the defeated alien leader, his chest heaving from the intense combat. "Surrender," he said simply. "It's over." The Zorgon commander's mandibles clicked in defeat as it signaled its capitulation. Throughout the system, the remaining enemy forces laid down their arms, the rogue alliance crumbling in the face of human and Voxari might. The victory celebration on Vox Prime lasted mere hours before alarms blared across the planet. Jacob and Quasar rushed to the command center, their dress uniforms still crisp from the ceremony. "What's happening?" Jacob demanded, his eyes scanning the holographic displays. A Voxari technician's feathers bristled as she reported, "Multiple border colonies under attack. We've lost contact with outposts in sectors 7 through 12. Quasar leaned in, his talons clicking against the console. "Show me the sensor readings." The display flickered, revealing only empty space where the attacks were supposedly occurring. Jacob's brow furrowed. "That can't be right. Recalibrate the sensors." "Already done, sir," the technician replied. "There's nothing there." As reports flooded in, the reality became clear. An invisible enemy was tearing through their defenses easily. Jacob watched helplessly as colony after colony went dark, their distress calls abruptly silenced. "We need to get out there," Quasar said, his voice tight with urgency. Jacob nodded. "Agreed, but we can't fight what we can't see." They assembled a joint task force, pooling the best minds from Earth and Vox Prime. For days, they pored over fragmentary data, searching for any clue to their mysterious attacker's identity. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A junior human analyst noticed an anomaly in the background radiation readings from the attack sites. It was subtle, easily overlooked, but it was there, a faint energy signature unlike anything in their databases. Jacob and Quasar presented their findings to a joint session of Earth and Voxari leadership. The chamber was tense, filled with the low murmur of worried voices. We're calling them the Archon, Jacob explained, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Based on the evidence, they've been watching us for years, learning our weaknesses. Quasar stepped forward, his crest feathers raised. We propose a new task force, combining the best of human and Voxari technology. With proper funding and resources, we can develop countermeasures to their cloaking abilities. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, desperation won out over caution. Jacob and Quasar were given carte blanche to assemble their team and develop the necessary technology. The next weeks were a blur of activity. Jacob oversaw the integration of experimental human sensor arrays with Voxari energy manipulation tech. Quasar drilled mixed squads of human and Voxari soldiers, pushing them to their physical and mental limits. In a sealed hangar bay, Jacob fired his new weapon at a shimmering target. The energy pulse struck true, revealing the outline of a cloaked drone for a split second before it exploded. It works, he said, a grim smile on his face. Quasar nodded, his talons flexing. Now we take the fight to them. Their first mission targeted an Archon shipyard, its location painstakingly deduced from patterns in their attack vectors. Jacob led the infiltration team, his heart pounding as their stealth shuttle slipped past the enemy's sensor grid. They moved through the massive facility like ghosts, planting charges on critical systems. Jacob's enhanced muscles strained as he pried open a sealed reactor housing, allowing Quasar to place the final explosive. 30 seconds, Quasar hissed. They ran, alarms blaring as they finally tripped the Archon's sensors. Jacob fired his new weapon, revealing cloaked defenders long enough for Quasar to take them down with lightning-fast strikes. They barely made it to their extraction point, the shipyard erupting into a massive fireball behind them. As they sped away, Jacob allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They'd bloodied the Archon's nose, but he knew the real fight was just beginning. The Archon's response was swift and brutal. A massive fleet materialized in orbit around Novus Prime, a major human Voxari colony. Jacob and Quasar coordinated the defense from the bridge of the flagship Defiant, barking orders as the space around them erupted into chaos. Concentrate fire on grid sector 4 Alpha, Jacob commanded. That's where their cloaked ships are massing. Quasar's talons danced across the tactical display. Voxari fighters, execute attack pattern Epsilon. Use the new sensors to find gaps in their formation. The battle raged for hours, space itself seeming to warp and twist as visible and invisible ships clashed in a deadly dance. Slowly, painfully, they began to turn the tide. We've located their command ship, a sensor operator called out. Jacob and Quasar shared a look. This was their chance to end it. Prepare boarding teams, Jacob ordered. Minutes later, they led the assault on the Archon flagship. Jacob's powered armor crackled with energy as he smashed through the hull breach, Quasar right behind him. They fought their way through twisting corridors, facing off against Archon warriors whose forms seemed to flicker in and out of reality. Jacob's enhanced strength and Quasar's lightning reflexes were pushed to their limits as they battled through waves of defenders. Finally, they reached the command deck, coming face to face with the Archon leader. The alien was tall, its form rippling like heat haze. It spoke, its voice a harsh buzz. You cannot hope to defeat us. Jacob raised his weapon. Watch us. The fight was brutal, a whirlwind of blows and energy blasts. Jacob's armor sparked and smoked as he took hit after hit, while Quasar's talons left glowing gouges in the Archon's strange, semi-solid flesh. In the end, it was their teamwork that won the day. Jacob feinted, drawing the Archon's attention long enough for Quasar to land a crippling blow. The alien leader fell, its form solidifying as its cloaking tech failed. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the Archon fleet began a full retreat. Jacob and Quasar stood over their fallen foe, battered but victorious. We did it, Jacob said, his voice hoarse. Quasar nodded, his feathers drooping with exhaustion. For now, but this is far from finished. As they made their way back to their own lines, both knew that this was only the beginning of a prolonged and difficult war. The Archon would be back, And next time, they'd be ready for the human Voxari Alliance's tricks. The real test of their partnership was yet to come. Jacob stood at the viewport of the Defiant, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Arkan homeworld. The planet pulsed with an eerie, shifting energy that made his skin crawl. "They're regrouping," Quasar said, his talons clicking against the console as he analyzed incoming data. "Our intelligence suggests they're preparing for a massive counteroffensive." Jacob nodded, his fists tight. "We need to act fast. Call an emergency summit with Earth and Vox Prime leadership. It's time to take the fight to them." Hours later, Jacob and Quasar stood before a room filled with the most powerful figures in human and Voxari society. The air crackled with tension as Jacob laid out their proposal. "A preemptive strike on the Arkan homeworld," he said, his voice steady despite the audacity of the plan. "It's risky, but it's our best chance to end this war before it escalates further." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. A human general leaned forward, his face etched with concern. "The casualties could be astronomical. How can we justify such an action?" Quasar stepped forward, his crest feathers raised. "The alternative is worse. If we allow the Arkan to strike first, we may not have the strength to stop them. This is our moment to act." Debate raged for hours, but in the end, desperation won out over caution. As the council voted to approve the operation, Jacob felt the weight of billions of lives settle on his shoulders. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Jacob and Quasar oversaw the assembly of the largest fleet in the history of their alliance. Massive human dreadnoughts bristled with experimental weaponry, while sleek Voxari warships hummed with energy beyond human comprehension. But it wasn't enough. Jacob paced the deck of his flagship, studying tactical projections that still showed them outgunned and outmanned. "We need an edge," he muttered. Quasar's eyes glinted with an idea. "What about our old enemies? The Zorgons, the Rockin' Horde. They hate the Arkan as much as we do." Jacob's eyebrows shot up. "You can't be serious." But he was. Days later, Jacob found himself in a grimy space station bar, face to face with a hulking Zorgon warrior. The alien's mandibles clicked menacingly. "Why should we help you, human?" it growled. Jacob leaned forward, his voice low. "Because we're offering you a chance at payback and a share of Arkan technology when we win." The Zorgon's compound eyes gleamed with interest. As their makeshift armada approached the Arkan homeworld, Jacob and Quasar led a small team on a stealth shuttle. Their mission: disable the planet's formidable defenses. They slipped past the outer sensor grid, their experimental cloaking technology holding barely. Jacob's heart pounded as they touched down near a massive energy pylons. "Move fast," he ordered, checking the charge on his disruptor rifle. "We've got 10 minutes before they detect us." They worked with practiced efficiency, planting charges and sabotaging key systems. Alarms blared as they sprinted back to their shuttle, Arkan energy bolts sizzling past their heads. "Now!" Jacob shouted into his comm as they broke atmosphere. Behind them, the planet's defenses flickered and died. The battle erupted with staggering violence. Human and Voxari ships unleashed salvos of energy weapons, while Arkan vessels shimmered in and out of reality. Jacob barked orders from the command deck, coordinating the complex dance of their diverse forces. "Zorgon cruisers, push through Sector 7, he commanded. "Rockin' fighters, cover their flank." Quasar's talons danced across the tactical display, identifying weaknesses in the Arkan formation. "There," he hissed. "That's our opening." Jacob nodded grimly. "Prepare the strike team. We're going in." Minutes later, they led an elite squad towards the planet's surface, their dropship bucking and weaving through a hail of enemy fire. They hit the ground hard, the impact rattling Jacob's teeth even through his powered armor. "Push forward," he roared, his disruptor rifle spitting fire at the waves of Arkan defenders. They fought their way through twisting corridors of alien architecture, every step a battle. Jacob's enhanced muscles burned with exertion as he grappled with Arkan warriors, their forms flickering and distorting. Quasar moved like lightning, his talons finding weak points in the enemy's strange, semi-solid armor. Together, they carved a path deeper into the Arkan stronghold. Finally, they breached the inner sanctum. The Arkan ruler towered before them, its form rippling with barely contained energy. It spoke, its voice a harsh buzz that set Jacob's teeth on edge. "You dare invade our home?" it snarled. "Your species will be erased from existence." The fight that followed pushed Jacob and Quasar to their absolute limits. The Arkan leader wielded weapons beyond their comprehension, reality itself seeming to warp around it. Jacob's armor sparked and smoked as he took hit after hit, while Quasar's lightning-fast strikes barely seemed to faze their opponent. They were losing, and they both knew it. Suddenly, the chamber's massive doors exploded inward. Through the smoke strode their unlikely allies, Zorgon berserkers and Rockin commandos, their weapons blazing. "Looks like you could use a hand," the Zorgon leader growled, its mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. With their combined might, they pressed the attack. Jacob's raw strength, Quasar's agility, the Zorgon's savagery, and the Rockin's cunning finally overwhelmed the Arkan ruler. As their foe fell, its form solidifying in defeat, Jacob allowed himself a moment of disbelief. They had done it. They had won. The next hours passed in a blur. The Arkan surrendered, their will to fight broken with their leader's fall. Jacob watched from the command deck as their mighty war machine was dismantled piece by piece. As the fleet prepared to depart, Jacob found Quasar staring out at the ruined Arkan homeworld. His friend's feathers were singed, his armor dented and scraped. "We did it," Jacob said quietly. Quasar nodded, his alien features unreadable. "Yes, but at what cost? And what challenges await us now?" Jacob had no answer. He simply stood there, shoulder to shoulder with his comrade, watching as the stars slowly wheeled. The stars faded as Jacob and Quasar's fleet entered Vox Prime's atmosphere. Jacob stood at the viewport, watching the planet's surface rush up to meet them. Quasar's talons clicked against the deck as he joined his human friend. "We did it," Jacob said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Quasar's crest feathers rippled. "Indeed, though I fear the real work begins now." As their ships touched down, a sea of cheering Voxari and humans surged forward. Jacob's boots hit the tarmac and he was immediately engulfed by the crowd. Hands reached out to touch him, voices calling out thanks and praise. He caught glimpses of Quasar, the Voxari's tall form surrounded by his own admirers. The celebration lasted for hours. Jacob found himself recounting the battle again and again, his throat raw from shouting over the noise. As night fell, he finally managed to extricate himself from the crowd, seeking a moment of quiet. He found Quasar in a secluded garden, the Voxari's eyes fixed on the stars above. Before Jacob could speak, a young human aide rushed up, her face pale. "Sirs, we need you in the command center immediately," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Minutes later, they stood before a bank of screens, each displaying rows of encrypted data. A team of human and Voxari analysts worked feverishly at nearby consoles. "What am I looking at?" Jacob asked, his eyes narrowing. A Voxari analyst turned, his crest feathers flat against his skull. "Treachery, sir. We've uncovered communications between a high-ranking Voxari official and Arkan remnants." Quasar's talons dug into the console. "Who?" The analyst's voice quavered. "Xylax, sir, your lieutenant." Jacob watched the color drain from Quasar's face. The Voxari stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," Quasar hissed. "Xylax has been my most trusted advisor for decades." But the evidence was irrefutable. As they pored over the data, the full extent of Xylax's betrayal became clear. He had fed the Arkan vital intelligence, enabling their devastating initial attacks. Quasar's shock gave way to rage. His talons gouged deep furrows in the metal console. "Where is he?" he snarled. An alert flashed on the main screen. Jacob leaned in, reading the data. "He's gone. A small ship just left the planet, heading for the wastelands." Quasar whirled, his eyes blazing. "Prepare my ship. I'm going after him. Jacob grabbed his friend's arm. Wait, we need to think this through. Let's bring him in peacefully. Give him a chance to explain. But Quasar jerked away, his voice cold. He's had his chance. Now he'll face justice. Hours later, their ship screamed over the barren landscape of Vox Prime's wastelands. Jacob piloted his craft alongside Quasar's, a pit in his stomach. He keyed his comm. Quasar, please. We can end this without bloodshed. Quasar's reply was curt. There will be blood for what he's done. Their sensors pinged, detecting a massive structure ahead. As they drew closer, Jacob saw an ancient Voxari stronghold, its stone walls now overflowing with salvaged Arkan tech. Quasar's voice crackled over the comm. All units, engage. Leave no one standing. The air filled with weapons fire as their strike team descended on the fortress. Jacob's powered armor whined as he hit the ground running, disruptor rifles spitting energy bolts at the defenders. The battle was chaos. Jacob lost sight of Quasar almost immediately, forced to focus on the enemies swarming around him. He ducked under a swing from a massive Voxari turncoat, his armor's enhanced strength allowing him to hurl the attacker into a group of his comrades. A familiar buzz filled the air, and Jacob's blood ran cold. He spun to see a pair of Xylax's followers wielding Arkan phase rifles, their forms shimmering as they prepared to fire. Jacob dove for cover, the ground where he'd stood moments before erupting into superheated plasma. He rolled to his feet, snapping off quick shots that dropped both enemies. The firefight seemed to last for hours. Jacob fought his way deeper into the stronghold, his armor scorched and dented. He rounded a corner and found himself face to face with three of Xylax's most fanatical supporters. The ensuing skirmish pushed Jacob to his limits. His muscles screamed as he grappled with a Voxari twice his size, using the alien's momentum to slam it into a wall. He barely avoided a vibroblade slash from another, countering with a swift kick that sent the attacker sprawling. The third enemy, a human traitor, raised an Arkan pulse cannon. Jacob's armor blared warnings as he threw himself to the side, the energy blast searing the air where he'd been standing. He came up firing, his disruptor rifle finding its mark. As the last attacker fell, Jacob heard the sounds of combat echoing from deeper within the stronghold. He sprinted down twisting corridors, his heart pounding. He burst into a vast chamber just in time to see Quasar and Xylax locked in vicious hand-to-hand combat. The two Voxari moved with blinding speed, talons flashing as they traded blows. Jacob raised his rifle, trying to find a clear shot, but the combatants were a blur of motion. He watched in horror as Xylax landed a crushing blow, sending Quasar staggering back. But Quasar rallied, centuries of combat experience evident in every move. He feinted, drawing Xylax in, then struck with lightning speed. His talons found a weak spot in Xylax's defenses, tearing through flesh and bone. Xylax fell, his life fading even as Quasar collapsed beside him. Jacob rushed forward, cradling his friend's broken body. Quasar's eyes, once so bright, now struggled to focus on Jacob's face. Listen, he wheezed, blood bubbling from his beak. The darkness, it's in all of us, even those we trust most. You must remain vigilant. Jacob clutched Quasar's talon, his voice choked with emotion. I will, I promise. With a final shuddering breath, Quasar's eyes closed. Jacob bowed his head, tears falling freely as he mourned his fallen friend. In the days that followed, Jacob threw himself into the work of rebuilding. He coordinated efforts to root out the remaining Arkan collaborators, all while navigating the fragile politics of the human Voxari alliance. But even as progress was made, Jacob could feel the scars left by Xylax's betrayal. Mistrust lingered in every meeting, suspicion coloring every interaction between humans and Voxari. Late one night, Jacob stood alone on a balcony overlooking the sprawling capital of Vox Prime. He thought of Quasar's final words, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The threat of the Arkan was gone, but a new challenge loomed. Jacob knew that the real fight lay ahead, not against an external enemy, but against the forces of fear and hatred that could tear their hard-won peace apart from within. He looked up at the stars, remembering all they had sacrificed to reach this point. Jacob's hands tightened on the balcony railing. He would not let their efforts be in vain. For Quasar's sake, for the sake of both their peoples, he would remain.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.